This is Rick, your digital nomad, and you're listening to Finally Breathing, Episode 1. Tonight's episode is going to help you understand why this podcast is called Finally Breathing. It's going to help you understand how I fell into this particular lifestyle, what has happened in this year, where I am now, and of course where I am going. So grab a cup of coffee or tea, whatever your preference is, and enjoy the episode. To begin with, I have to relate to you that aside from being a digital nomad, that is an online English teacher, I also work as a volunteer for an organization. I've been involved with this organization the majority of my life, and our work is in the pursuit of helping people to live better lives through the application of principles and the right kind of knowledge. This knowledge is to help them improve their lives now, but also to secure a future for themselves and for their children. This organization is located in over 240 countries throughout the world, so it's a worldwide organization, one that I'm very happy to be a part of. It was in 2016 that there was an opportunity to help my organization out in West Africa. And being that I had been learning French for a period of time, I made myself available to go out there. And so that's how the journey began. In 2016, I decided to relocate to Ivory Coast, or Côte d'Ivoire, as the French would say. And during that time, I decided that I would like to try to live abroad. So I thought one of the best ways I could do that would be to become an online English teacher. I had been involved in teaching so much of my life, and I felt very good about my linguistic skills, my ability to speak English and know how English works. So I decided to pursue that as a form of employment while I lived abroad. So that's how I got involved in my online work. However, for the next 2 years, while I was doing my volunteer work in Ivory Coast, I was traveling as well abroad. In 2017 mostly, I believe. In 2017, the first part, I went throughout Europe for 3 months, had a fantastic time visiting various countries, being reacquainted with certain friends, and experiencing new things. And in the latter half of 2017, I decided to do a world tour, which consisted of me basically stepping on the other 4 continents that I had not stepped on, you could say. And then, of course, circumventing the globe, which was an awesome life achievement, one I'm very proud and just so appreciative that I was able to do. And then I returned to Côte d'Ivoire in the beginning of 2018. But in one of the countries I had visited in Colombia, there looked like there was an opportunity to pursue my volunteer work there. So after 8 months of being in Ivory Coast in the year 2018, I decided to relocate to Colombia. And I was in Colombia for about 3 years. I was still doing my online work, but I was also able to obtain a work visa to work at a brick remain there. And I did that for about 3 years, like I said, into the pandemic. However, in 2020, I started to have certain problems with the visa. Essentially, my visa was denied renewal. And after trying to making some effort in trying to find an option, I finally made the decision in May of 2021 to leave. And that's really where the digital nomad aspect really came into play. After I left Colombia, I went back to the States for 2 months. Then I went to Britain for a month. And then I found myself in one of my favorite countries in France, in Paris, actually, for another 3 months. Towards the end of 2021, it didn't look like I was going to be able to stay in France any longer. So I had to decide where was I going to go. And I wanted to go to South Africa. I had made all the plans, bought the ticket, and then Omicron came into our lives, and I had to cancel everything, or at least put it on the back burner. So then, with South Africa not being an option at that time, I had to decide where I wanted to go. I looked into going to Turkey. I looked into going to Canada, all that had very easy immigration flexibility, I would like to say. But I found myself deciding to go back to Colombia. I really felt like, okay, I'd like to go somewhere warm. I'd like to go where I'm already familiar with things. I wanted to go somewhere where the cost of living was lower to get an advantage financially. It sounded perfect, and I've been there before, no issues. So I went back to the States actually, and I spent a couple weeks in Florida, and this is in January of this year, and then I decided to go down to Colombia, and this is where things got really, really just unexpected. Really, I wouldn't say rocky, but totally, took me by surprise. Immigration in Colombia towards the end was very difficult. A lot of it was due to the pandemic, I think. It was very hard to get appointments. It was really hard to get any answers from the immigration system. And it really left me with a very doubtful, skeptical approach to immigration in Colombia, especially. I'd always been skeptical of immigration, but this had a special peculiarity to it, I'd like to say. So anyway, I got all my ducks in the row, or so I thought, and I approached the customs booth. The individual was the usual gruff immigration officer that many of us are used to encountering. He asked all the questions I expected him to, and then he asked one that I had never encountered in my entire life. That is my life in Colombia, as to whether I had a return ticket. And I had to be honest and say, no, I don't. And he made an issue out of it. He turned me over to the back office. The immigration officer at that point who was interviewing me had no mercy. They decided that I could not enter Colombia because I did not have a return ticket, and they sent me back to the United States. And I was floored, because in all my travels, I had never, ever had that happen to me. I had taken for granted so much of my ability to glide into countries, I'd like to say. The world just became one big house. Every country was a room, and every airport was a door that I easily went through. And for the first time in my life, the door was slammed in my face by a country that I had lived in for 3 years. Big shock. But I didn't let that deter me. I had talked to a few other immigration officers, and they had related to me that, okay, not a big deal, come back in a couple days. And as long as you have the return ticket and your vaccinations, which at the time was important, you should be fine. So I went back to Florida. My friends helped me out a little bit to get me at the airport. I stayed at an Airbnb and waited a week. And I decided to enter in through a different way. I decided to go through Medellin instead of Bogota, because I was told that the people in Medellin are a whole lot nicer. So I went ahead and got a ticket, flew back, and even before I got to the customs booth, an immigration officer had walked out, called my name, and in front of everyone announced that I would not be allowed entry into Colombia. Even bigger shock. And this was quick. This was extremely quick. Whereas it took time in Bogota to basically expedite my exit, Medellin got it done within 2 hours. There was no interview, no questions, just you're not allowed in, sign this, you're getting on the next flight to Tampa. And none of my friends in Colombia had ever heard of this happening to anyone. So I went back to Tampa, Florida, and resettled there. Now, I realize that there are a whole lot worse things to encounter in life. And I have had worse things happen to me. But this one was very hard to take, because it felt just so unfair and arbitrary to be basically denied entry into a country, to be kicked out essentially, and just to have it so reinforced, not with one rejection, but two. So I went back to Florida, settled there. Florida, of course, is a beautiful state, as many of you would attest to, and it's not a bad place to land, especially in Tampa, right next to the water. But for the first, I think, the next 2.5 months, I really struggled. I really had a hard time because even though as I laid down a nice routine and I had friends there already and I was in a decent place to stay and I had the beach nearby, all I could think about was what happened, and I just spent so much time saying to myself, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. Because I had envisioned me being somewhere else. And that was a bitter, bitter pill to swallow. Now, I took advantage of the time to extend myself in other ways, to look into other options of taking my life in a certain direction. But I really struggled. I would spend nights just thinking about what happened and being angry and upset. Angry at the immigration, angry at myself for not doing the proper research I should have done. Just upset about everything. And I was scared because I didn't know what was going to happen as far as, do countries have this huge database where they keep track of these situations? What really happened was, people were telling me I was deported. I'm like, no, that doesn't sound right. I wasn't deported. I was denied entry. It's called inadmissible entry. That's all it is. But people were trying to convince me otherwise. I don't know why. But I was trying to research what exactly was going on, what that meant for future travels. Friends, the internet is amazing. And I'll tell you why. Because it has everything, but so much of the time, it can't tell you what you need to know. It was so frustrating to not find a situation that I could relate to on the internet, that I could say, oh yeah, that was it. That's what happened to me, and this is the outcome. Nothing like that, really. You found a lot of maybes, probably, but you never found definites. At least I didn't for my situation. No matter how much I reworded things in the browser, in the search engines, I never could find an exact story that matched what I was going through. So that created a lot of anxiety because I didn't know what this meant for future travels. And at this point, friends, I had become so used to being the digital nomad, the one living abroad, the one working online and making remote work for me. And I felt that door was closing, and it was scary. It was upsetting. I had tied so much into living this way, and I didn't know what the future was going to look like. Now, of course, you might be saying to yourself, Rick, that's a lot. And it probably is, but to walk through my mind is to know that there's a lot of heavy things going on in there, like the mind is true for everyone else. But I tried to find out what was happening. I had lawyer friends in Colombia who were telling me, okay, you can write to the immigration office and state your case, and maybe they can provide you more information. They provided me the necessary email addresses. I tried my best to call immigration myself in Colombia, which was completely useless. Talk about being on hold forever and then not getting anywhere. And of course, that just laid more into the anxiety. But I didn't give up. I wrote the necessary email, and towards the end of March, I finally received an answer. It was very general, but what I held on to was the fact that it said that you may enter Colombia provided that you fulfilled these requirements. And so I submitted the letter to one of my friends, another immigration lawyer in Colombia. She wrote back and said, yes, you can come back. So I definitely was, again, kind of letting go of the anxiety and, in a sense, slowly starting to breathe again. But yet not enough. Because at this point, I didn't really want to go back at that time. I was nervous. I didn't really have the money to do it. And so Colombia was going to have to wait. And as I spent more time in Florida, as I was getting a little more clarity on the situation, I started to feel better. I started to accept more of the circumstance. I was beginning to see the bright side of things. A big help was my friends. Of course, a big shout out to my friends in Florida that I made, who just enhanced my life in so many ways. I think of my friend Jordan, for example, the sweetest human being you could ever meet. The most emotionally nourishing person I think I've ever met. Nurturing person, I should say. Nurturing. And he did me a favor. He like I said, I lived near a beach, but I never went to the beach because I was too focused on other things. And he took me to the beach, and he helped me see this beautiful area that was right next door. And I realized it was there all along, and I just needed to take a moment to look. And he helped me to find that, and it added so much to my stay. But it was just the bigger concept. It's like, look around, appreciate what's around you. Stop, mulling over what happened. Beautiful life lesson, just reinforced. And time moved on, and I started to lay plans to leave the country again. But I was still extremely hesitant because I had never gotten that final say about, is there an international database that is my name is on it and something's going to be held against me? I didn't know. I mean, the research was telling me that the only database like that is Interpol, which is for the international police, and that's only involving whether you've done some major crimes. But still, I had not found a definite answer, so I was still a little bit nervous. So in June 15th, I went home to Washington State. My native visited family and friends, had a magnificent time. And then I decided to take things really slow as regards to international travel. I decided to go back to Europe. Some friends of mine had made plans to meet in Europe, but I wanted to go ahead of that. I wanted to go back to one of my favorite countries, France. But even before I did that, I actually made a small little trip to the UK. Why? Because I knew the UK was not Colombia. The UK was the US closest ally. They'd be more willing to accept its citizens. And if something came up, I'd be able to explain things more. So I actually made a quick little trip into the UK. And I have to admit, friends, I was still nervous. I went through the automatic customs, you could call it. I don't know what you would officially call it. Scanned my passport, and the gate opened. And I wouldn't say I ran through that gate, but I walked pretty fast. I went through that gate before it closed. And I actually just, sighed a little bit of relief. But I still wasn't done because I still needed to cross over into France. So I spent a few days in the UK catching up with some friends, and then I flew to France, which is my kind of, you could say, adopted country in some ways. One of my favorite places. And when I got through customs there, I really felt like I was breathing again. I'm like, yes, I have the ability to travel again. Yes, that situation in Colombia is not going to be held against me. I know, friends, you're probably saying, Rick, you really made a big deal out of a very small thing. Yes, I know, but again, you have to know me, which a few of you out there in the world do know me. So anyway, made it to France and spent 3 weeks and had the summer that I had been wanting to have for so long. L'été français, that is in English, a French summer. And it was remarkable. I was just so happy to be back in France, back in Paris, in Paris. And, things were winding down with work. And I really got to just be in France and speak French and visit my friends. It was just remarkable. And then, of course, that led to another European tour with my friend Sergio. We visited Portugal, Spain. I got to show him France a little bit. We went to the Netherlands, and then we went to Italy, went to Rome. Rome is phenomenal, friends. You must visit it. One of my favorite new places on this planet. Sergio went back to Colombia, but I continued my journey. I went further up north to visit friends in Sweden and Finland. And in the meantime, I decided that I was going to try South Africa again. The airlines left me with an open ticket because of the Omicron situation, and so I paid the difference and set my goal to come to Cape Town, South Africa. And that's where I am now. And again, little slight situation. Let me explain. So, of course, having learned from Colombia, I definitely did my research. Okay, what is needed to enter South Africa? Okay, U.S. citizen, you're allowed 3 months. Great. If you want to extend it, apply within the first month. Great. Okay, return tickets. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, what did the research say? The research told me that you could be asked for a return ticket. If you are and you cannot provide such, you will be charged a fine. The fine is not stated, so it could be anything. So I went ahead and booked a return ticket, or I should say an exit ticket, to leave South Africa. But I understood I was allowed 90 days. So I arrived in Cape Town. I waited. Interestingly, I was actually at the end of the customs line. That had never happened to me. I went to the booth. I talked to the immigration officer, and he asked me, how long are you staying? And I didn't state the amount of days. I just stated the date I was leaving. And I said November 26th. And he just looks at me and he goes, do you have a visa? And for a moment, my heart stopped, and I just said, not again. Oh, please, not again. And I just said nice and calmly, sir, I believe I'm allowed to stay 90 days as an American citizen. He looked at me, turned to his computer. I think he was probably calculating how long is it from August 31st to November 26th. And he found that it was 88 days, under the 90-day requirement. And he looked at me, nodded, stamped my passport, and I was in. And that's where I am now, friends, gratefully. And I have found South Africa, Cape Town, to be a wonderful city. South Africans are extremely friendly, extremely extroverted. I've enjoyed so much of my time here. I've gotten to see some pretty amazing things. And following tonight, I will be going on my first safari, which I'm super excited about. Something I think a lot of us have dreamed of doing, and I finally get the chance to do. So happy. And then after that, I'm here for another month. And then where to? Where is the next step? The next step, friends, will be India. Again, just to remind you, I am a volunteer, and I'm going to be pursuing my volunteer work in India. We are in that particular country, and I'm so excited. Now, how did India come into the picture, you might be wondering? Well, India actually was in the picture for a long time in some way. Back in 2020, I had intended to come to India. I had heard that my organization needed help, and I was going to visit it in December of 2020. But as you all know, 2020 was the year of the pandemic, and my plans were canceled. So India was, as far as I was concerned, especially when I was hearing the news reports about the severity of the coronavirus in India, it just didn't seem like it was going to happen. But anyway, continued on, and then while I was in Florida, I received a phone call from a friend of mine, old friend. I hadn't heard from him in a while, and he just proceeded to call and leave this message and say, hey, Rick, I just wanted to let you know that Linda, that is his wife, Linda and I are going to be going to India. And if you're around, stop by. And I just sat back and said, India, wow. I wasn't even thinking about that place, but now I am. So I called him, and I just asked him just some of the details. What's the visa situation looking like? When are you going? He really just rekindled this desire to go help my organization in India. And so I thought, you know what? Okay, I think we can do this. I think this can happen. And what was amazing is the reinforcement I got while I was traveling through Europe this year. My friend Sergio and I went to one of our organization's meetings, and in the process, I met a new friend. As he became a new friend, his name was Hansley. And he was, of course, asking where I was from, and I said, I'm from Seattle. And then he goes, do you know Noah so-and-so? And I go, well, I have heard of Noah so-and-so. Why? And he goes, well, I'm in contact with him. He's involved with the organization's efforts in India, and I'm going to India. And I looked at him and I go, you know what? I've been thinking about that. And Hansley was just more of a motivation, more of an inspiration to make an effort to relocate to India. So that's what I did. I started doing the research. I looked into the travel visa. I applied for it. Now, again, the experience from Colombia kind of came back and haunted me, because the application asked, have you been denied entry into a country? And you have to be honest. So I said yes, and I stated a slight, an explanation as to what happened. Of course, I've learned that with immigration issues, you try not to volunteer too much information. You just give them what they exactly need to know and information that they will not have to ask questions about. So I stated in general what happened. And there was that little bit of anxiety. I'm like, oh, please don't deny my visa. I really want to go here. It's, I didn't know. So I submitted, I paid the fee. A day went by. Oh, please, are they going to approve it? I really hope so. It came back approved. So now I have a exit visa for the next 5 years. Of course, it's a tourist visa. It's not a volunteer visa. But it's going to enable me to come and go for the next 5 years, and I'm super excited about that. As an American citizen, I'm allowed to stay there for at least 6 months, and I can, at that point, I will have to exit, but then I can come back and stay another 6 months. It's perfect, and I can't wait. I can't wait for that door to open. Honest as well that there is some anxiety and trepidation, but the big obstacle for me is just getting in there. After that, the rest is a piece of cake, and I'm so looking forward to all of it. So what to take away from all of that, especially from what happened in Colombia? Just again, reinforcement that this too will pass, that one always needs to appreciate the beauty and the good things of their circumstance, and to embrace what comes along. One thing I was always trying to tell myself, even during the bad moments, was that I embrace the adventure that is my life. We use that word adventure so loosely. We always think of it as fantastic and exciting. Well, friends, what makes an adventure is difficulty. But it's difficulty that's overcome. That's where the happiness and all the benefits and what really makes the adventure is the overcoming of the obstacles that are placed before you. And certainly that experience really reinforced that valuable lesson. If you want your life to be the adventure, you must embrace the bad along with the good. And I am so thankful for a beautiful reminder in that. And I am so thankful for the opportunities that are before me. And I am so thankful for the people on the journey. It's the people on this journey that make so much of it worthwhile. So much of it worthwhile. And I'm so grateful that this boy from rural Washington State, is able to live it, to dream it, to experience it. So friends, thanks again for listening to Finally Breathing. This is Rick Cruz, your digital nomad, wishing you a good night, wishing you bravery and courage in all you do. And remember this, just a little side point here. Confidence is always within our reach as long as we allow ourselves to attain it. Good night.